Skal jeg bare gå i gang? Yes? Okay. Hello, I'm Michelle. I'm from Center for Assisted Living Technology, and I'm here to tell you about our issues using technology for patients without the opportunity to give an informed consent. And we have both ethical and legislative barriers on that. I'm here mostly because I've been a project manager on the project Længere Hjem Sammen, which is a project that tried to, with a sensor technology, tried to relieve stress level and worries from the relatives of people suffering from dementia, because the relatives are having a lot of stress and a lot of worries that everything or something will happen to their relatives when they are out the home. But they have to take care of their job still and remain in their social interactions with others, go to sports and stuff like that. And they, over time, they'll stop involving themselves in social activities without their partner, because they are too afraid of leaving the partner at home. And what we did was that we used that kind of sensor system. It's like motion sensors, small motion sensors placed all around the house at doors and windows and in the rooms. And then if something would happen, for instance, you wouldn't move at all in your home, then you would get, as a relative, you would get a text on your phone. And we did it the old school way, that you got a text instead of using an app, because a lot of the participants didn't use smartphones yet. So they got a text saying that your partner hasn't moved at all for maybe half an hour, something could be wrong, please contact them or ask your neighbor or stuff like that. So you didn't have to worry all the time. And we also had these contacts on the doors and windows, because a lot of the people suffering from dementia leaves their home and aren't able to find back. So they got a text, your partner had left the home and he hadn't returned within 20 minutes or something like that. And that would depend on the family, how these time alarms were set, because they had different routines. And that was actually one of the problems in this project, was that to set these alarms properly, because sometimes you would get too many or too few. So the balance is really difficult setting this up. But that was not the biggest conclusion. The biggest conclusions and things we learned in this project were definitely all these barriers of using technology for the people, because they aren't able to do the consent. Because here in this project we were forced to use only people being able to make consent, and people suffering from dementia still being able to make their own informed consent aren't really happy about engaging in projects like that, because they are not aware yet that they are sick. They're still hoping that they'll get better and this will disappear somehow. So that's a big problem. And the people who actually really need this is suffering too much of the disease, so they aren't able to do the consent. So it's a bit of a gray area what to do. And what we found out, and the challenge, and what we have been working on since, is that the technology changes so fast, and the laws and legislation for the municipalities are so old. They are not following the technological development, and it makes us not able to do the best care of our citizens. Because we have a lot of opportunities now using these kind of monitoring technologies, but also technologies in general. But we are not allowed to use them, because it's against the use of the law about use of force, and in general it's just illegal to use this when you are not able to have a consent from the users. It actually also is very bad for us, because we aren't able to take care of our care duty. As a municipality, we have to take care of all citizens in need of help. But when we are not allowed to use these technologies without a consent in, of course, specific situations, then we actually also make a discrimination between you being physically sick and mentally sick. because if you have a broken arm or something, another physical disability, you are allowed to get these kind of sensor systems and technologies. But if you have dementia or suffering from any other cognitive condition, you can't, because you're not able to give a consent. And that's really bad for the municipality, and it's really bad for the care staff as well, because they really just want all the best for the citizens, but they're actually just standing in the middle, not being able to do anything because of the law. And of course the law is there. I have to say, we are not there to just remove the law. We know that the law is there to protect the citizens' freedom of right, and their right to freedom and their right to privacy and right to their own decisions. But sometimes they don't know what they need, and they don't know the opportunities they can have, because they don't understand how the technology works. And one of the other problems that we discovered was that the law is very, what should we call it, fluffy. It's not very well described. So every city and every municipality can make their own interpretation of the law about consent. So in some municipalities, you can give a consent by just... In Aarhus, you have to be, it's really strict. You have to know exactly what you're signing, and if I ask you tomorrow, you should be able to tell me what you signed yesterday. No one suffering from dementia can do that. But in other municipalities, it's okay if you just don't disagree when signing. So the interpretation is really different, and it also makes the difference in care you can get across the country very different. So that's also a big issue that we really realized during this project, because this project, I forgot to say, was done in 5 municipalities, and we tried to figure out how we do stuff in the 5 different municipalities, and we do it 5 different ways. So, and the last challenge we are really working on or have to take care of when using these kind of technologies for people without the ability to make consent is the right to personal freedom, right to self-determination, right to privacy, right to do whatever you want even though you're sick. But when do you know if this is the best for you or not? And when do I know what's best for you as a care person? I don't. And we have to find a way in that to make sure that when I give you a technology, it's not for my sake as a care personnel, it's for your sake, because you can get better. And we're working on that, a method to make sure that no one is forced to use technology or forced to be monitored when they not want to. So I want to tell you 2 stories, and these are 2 actual human beings from the different municipalities who are really in the middle of this challenge. Because this is Arne, and he's in the 70s, and he's mentally disabled, and he has a bipolar disease. And when he's maniac, he can't sleep at night. He gets up, and when he gets up at night, he starts raging his apartment. Everything is ruined, and he starts urinating all over. Takes off all his clothes and leaves the door. And this is not just the perfect case. It's actually a human being from Skive who is suffering from these kind of problems. The nursing home did that. They put this sensor on the door and a sensor near his bed, so they could get an alarm if he went up at night in his manic periods. And also if he left the door, they could go straight ahead after him, tell him, Arne, please go to bed, it's nighttime, and put on some clothes and put him to bed again. But they aren't allowed to. They were forced to remove these sensors, even though it makes perfect sense for the care personnel, but also for Arne. Because Arne, the only opportunity now is to put one person beside Arne's bed when he's in his manic periods, and make sure he gets back to bed if he wakes up. And they actually have to do that. It takes a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of energy. And it's really bad for Arne, because Arne can't handle too much and close contacts with other persons. So he gets stressed, and even worse, not having the census, but they're not allowed to due to the law. And that's their interpretation of the law. Maybe some other place, maybe in another municipality, it would be different. And that's the problem. We also have Judith, and she's actually a perfect example of the target group we had in our project Længere Hjem Sammen. She has a husband suffering from dementia, and he doesn't know that. He still keeps thinking that he will get over the dementia and it won't get worse, and everything will be as it used to. But it's just getting worse and worse, and it goes really fast. She's 78 years old and healthy, both mentally and physically. And she has a very active social life with lots of activities and friends, and she goes to sports and stuff like that. And she's also a voluntary friend, so she goes out to visit other old people in need of a friend. And she's now stopped doing all these social activities. She gets more and more social isolated due to the worries about her husband, because she knows that he leaves the home when she's not there. He aren't able to get back, even though he has a GPS. But he could also turn on the stove and not turn it off again, and stuff like that. And she gets more and more worried, more and more social isolated. And we know, due to research, that if you are under this kind of stress for a long time, and if you are relative to a relative suffering from dementia, then you are in bigger risk yourself of getting dementia. So these are just cases, and it's like a sum up of all our project. But what are we doing now, and what are our focus in Aarhus? We want to work more on this. We want to know more about how we can do this consent. How can we use technologies for this kind of target groups without harming any citizens or any care personnel? So our focus is always on the citizens. We will never do monitoring just for our own sake. Because why? Why should we look at citizens' data if we are in no use of this and if it doesn't make any sense for the citizen? We are there to take care of them. The personal right to self-determination and personal freedom always counts. And we do that all the time. Every time we take care of a person, we think about that. The care personnel do that in their sleep. They always take the citizens in the first place. They know what's best for them. They know how they have been over time. But we also have to make sure that the relatives get in there and say, oh, my father hated all kind of monitoring, or my father hated this kind of things. He has done that his whole life. Okay, I can't see that, but I respect that, so we should do something different. We do that already, but we have to put it in some kind of schema or something else when using these kind of technologies to make sure that we are not harming anyone. But it helps a lot of people if we can use these kind of technologies. We also have to make sure that this ethical evaluation is done before we start using these technologies. And we have to make sure that we have some kind of management strategies within the municipality, because we have to make sure that if I start monitoring you, it will be okay because you get better. But when you stop getting better or stop feeling nicer when using this technology, we have to stop. We don't have to monitor you just because we can. If it doesn't make sense anymore, and if you doesn't have any benefits from this as a citizen, we stop as a municipality. So this is some kind of sum up, because we've worked a lot around this topic. So this is our conclusions, and this is actually what we told, what's it called? Folketinget. The parliament. We actually presented these things for the parliament after our project, saying we have some issues here. We really want to do this, but we can't. And people are in the gray zone. They are suffering from this, us not being able to use these technologies. We want to do this. We want to make all these arrangements. Please let us. Please look upon the law. Do something. So what we're doing now, what we actually can do, we have a few things that we can do using these without consent. And it's if you are in custody, or if you have someone taking care of all your personal stuff. That's a big step. It takes a lot of time, and it's often done too slow compared to the development of this disease. we have this new future power of attorney where it's a new method where you can say, if I have dementia when I get old, my husband gets the right to decide what I have to do. But we don't know if that works yet, because it's a new thing. We don't know actually how to use it yet. There's no experiences yet. So maybe it's a possibility to use in the future, but we don't know yet. And then we can use the legislation within use of force law, where we are allowed to actually monitor you even though you don't want to, if I can prove it's the only thing that is making you better. But it really, really also gives a lot of documentation. It takes a lot of time, and you have to get what's it called? It's really difficult, and it's not an opportunity actually in practice. So what are we working on now? And to sum up this before Tove will go on, is we are working with this still. We are not there yet. We can't use this. The law hasn't changed. The guidelines hasn't changed yet. So our dreams and what we are working upon is getting a more consistent interpretation of the law we have already. Because right now it's so different. If we can at least agree on what to do within the law we have, that's the first big step. And then we want to make a national focus on this and work with issues. Because right now every municipality has to make their own solutions within this field and look upon all these things. We should go together, look upon this and make a common solution nationally. And then we're actually trying to make a bill of amendments that support the use of modern and monitoring technologies for the citizen without being able to give consent. That's in the future. That takes a lot of time to make them agree that we have to change the law a bit. We don't want to remove the law, I'll say it again, because we know that it's there to protect the citizens and we want to respect that. But we have to, the law has to follow all our new possibilities. Yeah?
Thank you. So while Tove gets the microphone, I think it is